Chapter 17 of the Motor Boys in Mexico, or The Secret of the Buried City. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Motor Boys in Mexico, or The Secret of the Buried City by Clarence Young. An Interrupted Kidnapping. As the auto containing the naturalist and the boys progressed, the road became more and more difficult to travel. Part of the way was overgrown with brush, and several times the travelers had to stop, get out, and cut big vines that grew across the path. "I guess there hasn't been much going on along this highway," observed Jerry. "And I don't believe it will ever be much in favor with autoists," said Ned. "There's too much sand." There was a great deal of the fine dirt, and in some places it was so soft and yielding that the wheels of the car sank down halfway to the hubs, making it impossible to proceed, except at a snail's pace. Then again would come firm stretches where the going was easier. In this manner several miles were traversed. The forest on either side of the road became more dense and wilder. Thousands of parrots and other birds flew about among the trees, and troops of monkeys followed the progress of the automobile, chattering as if enraged at the invasion of their stamping ground. Suddenly the screams and chattering of the monkeys ceased. The birds also stopped their racket, and the silence was weird after the riot of noise. Then there came such a series of shrill shrieks from a band of monkeys that it was evident something out of the ordinary had happened. The next instant a long, lithe, yellow animal shot across the road in front of the auto. The big beast had a monkey in its mouth. "A jaguar!" exclaimed the professor. "Quick, boys, get the rifle!" Ned handed the weapon to the professor, who fired 3 times quickly, but the jaguar leaped on, unharmed. "Well, we're getting into the region of big game," remarked the naturalist, "and we'll have to be on the lookout now, or some of the beasts will be trying that trick on us." "The monkeys must have seen him. That's why they kept so still that time," remarked Bob. "But it didn't do that particular one any good," said the professor. "He must have been caught napping. Well, Mr. Jaguar will have a good supper tonight." "That reminds me," spoke Bob. "When are we going to eat?" "That's right. Speak of eating, and you'll be sure to hear from Chunky," said Jerry. "But I suppose we'll have to camp pretty soon. It's 5 o'clock, and there don't seem to be any hotels in the vicinity," and he glanced at the dense forest on every side and grinned. "We'll camp at the next clearing," said the professor. "Better get to a place where there's a little space on every side of you when there are wild animals about." A mile further on the travelers came to a place where the trees were less thick. There was an open space on either side of the road. The auto was placed under the shelter of a wide-spreading palm, and then the adventurers busied themselves getting supper. The professor took a gun and went a little way into the woods. He shot a small deer, and in a little while some choice venison steaks were broiling over the camp stove. "This is something like eating," remarked Ned. "I was getting tired of those frijoles, eggs, and tortillas," and he accepted a second helping of venison. The rubber and woolen blankets were taken from the auto, and the travelers prepared to spend the night in the forest. "I guess we'll mount guard," said the professor. "The forest is full of jaguars. I saw 3 while I was hunting the deer." "Let me stay up," begged Jerry. "I'm not sleepy, and I'd like to get a shot at one of the beasts." Ned also wanted to remain up, but the professor said he could take the second watch, and, content with this, Ned turned in with the others. As the night wore on, the forest resounded more and more with the noises made by wild beasts. The howls of the foxes mingled with the more terrifying yells of the jaguars, and of the latter beasts the woods seemed to be full. Jerry, with a loaded magazine rifle, was on the alert. He kept up a bright fire, for he knew that unless made desperate by hunger no wild thing would approach a flame. There were queer rustlings and cracklings of the underbrush on every side of the sentinel. Now and then through the leaves he caught glimpses of reddish-green eyes reflecting back the shine of the blaze. Following the plans they had made, Bosco Bellet and his Mexicans, together with Noddy and the crowd in the automobile, had trailed the boys and the professor to the camp. With great caution, Bosco had led his men to within a short distance of the fire Jerry had kindled, and Noddy's auto was in readiness for the kidnapping. So, though Jerry did not know it, there were the eyes of dangerous men on his movements as well as the eyes of dangerous beasts. Like dark shadows, the Mexicans slowly encircled the camp. They were so close they could distinguish the sleeping forms. "Which is Bob?" whispered Vasco to Noddy. "That one right at the foot of the big palm tree," replied Noddy Nixon, pointing out the banker's son. "Is everything ready?" the leader of the Mexicans asked. "All ready," replied Noddy. Vasco was about to steal forward, hoping to be able to grab up Bob and make off with him before the camp was aroused. In case of resistance, he had given his men orders to shoot. But at that instant a big jaguar, driven wild with hunger, and braving all danger, had crept to within a few feet of Jerry. The animal smelled the meat of the recently killed deer, the carcass of which hung in a tree. The fierce beast determined to get a meal at all hazards. It crouched on the limb of a tree, just above Jerry's head, ready for a spring at the body of the deer. Jerry happened to glance up. He saw the long, lithe body, tense for a leap, the reddish-green eyes glaring at him. Jerry was not a coward, but the sight of the brute, so dangerous and so close to him, scared him greatly for a second or two. Then, recovering his nerve, he raised the rifle, took quick aim, and fired 3 shots in rapid succession. With a snarl and roar, the jaguar toppled to the ground, tearing up the earth and leaves in a death struggle. "What's the matter?" called out the professor. "Are you hurt, Jerry?" cried Ned. Bob, too, roused up, and the whole camp was soon astir, everyone grabbing a gun or revolver. Jerry fired 2 more shots into the jaguar, and the struggle ceased. "I got him just in time," he remarked. The others crowded around the brute. "Halt!" exclaimed Billette, under his breath, as, ready with his men to rush on the camp, he saw that his plan was spoiled. "If it had not been for that jaguar, I would have had the captive. Come, we must get out of this." End of chapter 17. Read by Nancy Cochran Gergen, Gilbert, Arizona, November 18, 2023.